Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm gonna make Aquaman's Quindent. It's a Trident, but it's got 5 points, so it's. I'm gonna start with a full-size printout, and I scaled it to what I thought the diameter of the main pole arm should be, which is about 1.4 inches. This makes the full head of the Trident about 27 inches long. I think about how I want to make the forks. Should I just cut the profile from a couple sheets of foam and sharpen the edges of the sander? Or I could use the jigsaw pieces from the edges of the mats, cut them on an angle, and keep the factory finish on all of the parts. Now I can cut the foam into wedges with a razor knife. I tried it and it works, but the cuts looked hand done and not super smooth. Instead, I'm going to use my bandsaw, tilting the table so it cuts the edge pieces from corner to corner, and set up the fence on my bandsaw to help keep the cuts straight. Even with a regular wood blade, the bandsaw easily cuts through the foam and leaves a clean edge. It's just not as smooth as the factory edge. I set the table flat again and cut the angle off the back of each wedge piece. This way, I can place them together and form a peak in the center of each fork. Now it's going to take 4 pieces of foam for each of the forks. And now this seems like a lot of effort, but once they are glued together, they're done. No need for additional finish work or sanding. I use contact cement to glue the backs together, and I add a weird little wedge shape at the bottom because the center of the fork flares out. Now I know the foam's going to wiggle and not stay straight, just glued together, so I plan to add a wire coat hanger in the core of each fork to stiffen them. I bend a little curl on the end of the coat hanger so it won't poke through the foam. I cut a channel in the foam wedges for the wire hanger to fit in so the foam won't bulge. The hanger will just fit in between the seams of all the other foam parts. Once the contact cement has had a chance to dry and get sticky, I carefully glue the halves together. I plan to make all 5 of the forks the same way, and I'm going to use one long wire coat hanger to attach the outer 2 forks along one single long piece, connected all the way through the back curve. I trim the bottom of the main fork to meet the curved section and use some larger wedges for this part. My collection of foam edges were different sizes, so I saved the biggest ones for here. Now, if you don't have a pile of foam edges, don't worry. Just take a single sheet, cut it into strips, and then you can cut wedges from each of those strips. My plan was to use up all the puzzle pieces I've been saving. I cut a channel in the second set of forks so they'll sit over the curve and poke the wire through. And then I can bend it to match the main wire, and contact cement will hold everything together. A 1-inch wooden dowel will fit inside of the 1-inch PVC pipe I plan to use for the middle of the Trident. So I cut a piece off and drill out the end so I can hot glue the coat hanger wire ends into the wooden dowel. I finish the outside forks and add some more thick wedges to the back of the curve. And there's a couple little barbs that go on these small outer forks. To make the curved pieces under the forks, I start by cutting a piece of foam about 18 inches long, it's 2 inches on the edge, and it bulges to nearly 6 inches in the middle. I heat the foam with a heat gun and curl it to shape. Then I cut a large triangular dart out of the middle so I can get the tight angle that I want. Now, my first try wasn't big enough, so I cut the dart a little larger. And then I can glue the darts closed, and I cut a 1-inch strip to fit inside to make this section look solid. I mark where the wooden dowel needs to pass through and cut out the foam with an X-Acto knife. Then I use the circle that I cut out to trace where the wooden dowel has to go through the peak and carefully cut that out too. Once I can slip the part into place, I can trim the ends to fit the curve in the back of the forks and contact cement it all together. To make the points of the Trident, I cut some pie slice shapes out of 3mm craft foam, making one larger for the center point. Now I don't have a size for these, I just kind of guessed. And I add a disc to the bottom of each of these cones so it'll be easier to glue them onto the fork tines. Now these points are supposed to be barbed and not just cones, so I sand the sides down with the belt sander and curve the ends on each one. Then I cut the diamond shape out of the bottom and place them onto the forks. The center tip is put on straight and all of the sides point in slightly towards the center, and I'll use super glue to hold the tips in place. They're all straight, right? Because I put glue all over them, so supposedly they're not. All right, good, they're all straight. I don't like the look of the wood dowel on the end, so I cut a piece of 3mm craft foam and glue it on to cover the dowel. The 1-inch dowel fits inside the 1-inch PVC pipe, so I can cut a small piece and glue it over the dowel. Now this is where the next 3 sets of scales will glue to, so they look like they're all sitting on top of the full handle that I'll attach later. I cut a set of longer scales, and then I'll add 4 more shorter ones. The scale is kind of a triangle shape, with a rounded point and a large bevel cut onto the flat side. The bevel allows the scale to be glued right up against the PVC, and they can overlap each other. The final set glued on overhanging the PVC pipe. This way, when the pole in the middle is attached, the seam between the pieces of PVC will be hidden from view. I also add 1 more small piece of craft foam to fully hide the wooden dowel. Alright, I finished the head. Now I can spray this with black Plastidip, then I can come back and hit it with some silver spray paint. While that's drying, I'm going to work on the bottom end, which is what? The pommel? What is that called in a trident? Now I want to make the pommel end, or the backside of the trident or quindent. And I don't want to just make it out of foam, because if I ever set it down, it'll deform. But if I actually use a piece of wood, now I'm safe to actually stand around and hold it at a con all day, or even possibly lean it up against the wall. Now this is just a piece of scrap closet rod. I was sanding the end to make like a ship's wheel for a pirate ship, but that didn't happen. So instead, I'll use it for the very bottom. I'll take it to the bandsaw and cut it off, and then with a drill press and a Forstner bit, a 1-inch Forstner bit, and I'll actually drill out a channel inside of it, even though that's not going to leave me much. That'll be okay, and then I can glue it together. I add about 6 inches of PVC to the end, and I use more of the foam wedges that I had cut to wrap the bottom and make a series of decorative rings. I use a piece of 3mm craft foam to wrap the pommel. Now this will cover the transition of the wood to the PVC, and it'll cover up all the wood grain. I cut up a weird little drawstring bag that I had to use the fishnet as a texture, because nothing says Aquaman like a little fishnet. I've never tried to glue fishnet with contact cement before, and I thought that if I placed it on while it was still a little wet, I could move it around and keep it from wrinkling, and this actually worked. Then I covered all the edges of the fishnet, making a little Gothic arch. I added the next piece and covered its seam with a single strip of wedge foam, wrapping all the way around it, and I was surprised at how well it took that tight curve at the top. So I got both ends coated with black Plastidip. It's kind of like a primer coat. The Plastidip helps to seal up some of the rough edges of the foam and allows the silver spray paint that I'll apply next to stick better. Now, the other plan that I had was to take a bit of this 1-inch PVC pipe and make it so it fits over the 1-inch dowel that's in the middle of each of these pieces. And that'll allow me to make a quindent of any size that I want. Of course, I want to make it about 7 feet, because that's about how big it is in the movie. So what I need to do is figure out how much material I have here and how much of a pipe I need to cut out. So if this guy is 27 inches and this guy is 17 inches, that's going to be 34 inches, and 7 feet's 84, so 34 from 84 leaves me with 40. So what I need to do is actually drill out and put a little set screw. That'll help hold the ends in place so they won't fall off at any point as I hit the ceiling. So they won't fall off when I move around. And just a tiny little wood screw would be good enough for that. The only other thing I'm going to need to do is actually paint the PVC pipe black with just regular black spray paint. I know I've used Plastidip on everything else. You can't use Plastidip on PVC pipe because the Plastidip doesn't stick. Plastidip is actually kind of a vinylized rubber, and it'll just peel off of the PVC pipe. Now, it's not super easy to do, but this will happen if you're carrying it around all day. So it's much better to just use spray paint on PVC, and the Plastidip works well with the foam because it's open and porous, and it actually gets into the cracks and sticks. And then of course it's flexible, so it doesn't crack on the foam. That's why I'm constantly using Plastidip on the foam. Anyway, let's get some spray paint. And everything's sprayed with silver spray paint. The PVC pipe had a coat of flat black spray paint, and then I went over it again with some silver. I didn't worry about having a really solid coat of silver. Splotchy's okay, so I'm now going to rub everything down with black shoe polish. I really like the pewter color I get from covering the silver spray paint with shoe polish, and it's pretty easy to do, possibly easier than just watering down some black acrylic paint, which would work for this process too. Once I've covered everything with shoe polish, I dry brush some bright silvercraft paint on all the edges and over the fishnet texture. Slip the 3 parts together, drill out some pilot holes, and add a couple of small wood screws to keep the ends in place. All of the pieces for this project I picked up locally, and I put a part list in the description. So here it is at 7 feet tall. It's my Aquaman Quindent. It's so tall it won't fit within the frame of the video, and I gotta hold it at a weird angle. Now I know there's lots of different ways that you could go about making a staff or a trident or a similar weapon, but this is how Odin makes. I have a Patreon page where I give away props made right here on the show. This month's winner is James Wilson, and he won the Infinity Gauntlet. Heaven help us all. If you like the video or have ideas or something for me to make, please leave them in the comments below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture. Quick spoiler for you, Poseidon actually hid the soul gem inside of the trident. Thanos is never going to be able to find it because it's actually hidden in a DC movie. Pretty smart.